Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Shurmila Mujumdar, Associate Professor, Department of English, University of Kalyani, West Bengal. This is your module on Arthur Miller, the famous American playwright, and in this module you will learn about his life and work, and there will be a special emphasis on one of his best known plays, Death of a Salesman. Arthur Miller was born on 17th October 1915. He was a playwright, essayist and activist of the American theatre movement. Miller was a public figure and had composed plays like All My Sons 1947, Death of a Salesman 1949, The Crucible 1953 and A View from the Bridge 1955, which was revised in 1956. He also wrote screenplays and was most noteworthy for his work, The Misfits. Arthur Miller's birthplace was Harlem in New York City borough of Manhattan, and he was the second of the three children of Augusta and Isadore Miller. His father was an Austrian Jewish immigrant and his mother was from New York, born to Austrian Jewish parents. His father owned a women's clothing manufacturing business. He was a wealthy and respected man in the community. So you see, Arthur Miller was of Jewish parentage, and his father probably fled from the Holocaust of the Second World War, and they were prosperous people into business, which they lost in the Great Depression of 1929. In the Wall Street crash of 1929, the family lost almost everything and moved to Gravesend, Brooklyn. As a teenager, Miller worked as a bread delivery boy before school to contribute to his family's income. After graduating in 1932 from Abraham Lincoln High School, he worked regularly to pay for his college fees. He then joined the University of Michigan, where he first majored in journalism and worked for the student paper, the Michigan Daily. So you can see, though he was born into a wealthy family, the family lost its fortune and he had to struggle hard to complete his education, and he worked during his student days to pay for his tuition fees, basically. He was married to Mary Grace Slattery in 1940. The couple had two children, Jane and Robert. In 1940 was also the year in which his first play was produced. The Man Who Had All the Luck won the Theatre Guild's National Award. In 1994 interview with Ron Rifkin, Miller confessed that most contemporary critics regarded All My Sons as, quote, a very depressing play in a time of great optimism, and that positive reviews from Brooks Atkinson of the New York Times had saved it from doom. Now, 1940 was considered to be a great time of optimism in America because you see, America participated in the Second World War, and when the Allied forces won the battle, America came out as a confident nation which became a big player in the international scene, and that is what probably is meant when it is said that 1940 was a great time of great optimism. But as we move into the 50s, late 40s and 50s, we will see that how America was trying to negotiate between a very conservative, middle-class, bourgeois feeling of being wealthy, being happy and being complacent on the one hand, and on the other, all kinds of uncomfortable questions about American materialism and American value system was being asked. And so what Arthur Miller tried to do is to negotiate between the two. In the year 1948, Miller built a small studio in Roxbury, Connecticut. There he wrote the first act of Death of a Salesman in one single day. The play was both a commercially successful and a critically acclaimed play, winning a Tony Award for Best Author and the New York Drama Circle's Critic Award and the Pulitzer Prize for Drama. It was the first play to win all three of these major awards. The play was performed 742 times. Now we go into a discussion of his major achievements and his major works, and after that we can come back to some discussion of the play The Death of a Salesman. He was awarded the National Medal of Arts in the year 1993. Miller was also honored with the Penn Laura Pels International Foundation for Theatre Award for being a Master American Dramatist in the year 1998. In 2001, Miller was selected by the National Endowment for the Humanities to deliver the Jefferson Lecture, which was the US federal government's highest honor for achievement in the humanities. Miller's lecture was entitled On Politics and the Art of Acting. Now, let me remind you something that in the 1940s, Miller was suspected of having a communist link. Later in life, he became critical of Soviet Russia, and he supported the dissident writers there, and quite late in his life he was invited to deliver the Jefferson Lecture. So you see, there is this oscillation in his character from being suspected a communist to a supporter of the Soviet writers who rebelled against the communist regime there, to a man who has been accepted by the US federal government, accepted him enough to invite him to deliver the Jefferson Lecture. Now you can see here is a list of his works. The important ones are Honors at Dawn, 1938, The Man Who Had All the Luck, 1940, All My Sons, 1947, Death of a Salesman, 1949, The Crucible, 1953, A View from the Bridge, 1955, A Memory of Two Mondays, 1955, After the Fall, 1964, Incident at Vichy, 1964, The Prize, 1968. The Creation of the World and Other Business, 1972, The Archbishop's Ceiling, 1977, The American Clock, 1980, Playing for Time, it's a television play, also in 1980, Elegy for a Lady, it's a short play, 1982, first part of Two-Way Mirror, Some Kind of Love Story, a short play, The Last Yankee, 1991, The Ride Down Mount Morgan, 1991, Broken Glass, 1994, My Peter's Connections, 1998, Resurrection Blues, 2002, Finishing the Picture, 2004. There are his radio plays also. He was a playwright. He was a very successful screenplay writer for Hollywood, and there were also radio plays to his credit, some of which are The Pussycat and the Expert Plumber Who Was a Man, 1941, Joel Chandler Harris, 1941, Battle of the Ovens, 1942, Thunder from the Mountains, 1942, I Was Married in Bataan, 1942, That They May Win, 1943, Listen for the Sound of Wings, 1943, Bernadine, 1944, I Love You, 1944, Grandpa and the Statue, 1944, The Philippines Never Surrendered, 1944, The Guardsman, 1944, it was based on Ferenc Molan's play, The Story of Gus, 1947. As I mentioned earlier, he was a successful screenplay writer and probably you will be thrilled to know that for a short period he was married to none other than Marilyn Monroe, the Hollywood diva. So here are some of these screenplays. All My Sons, which he did in 1948, The Hook, 1947, Let's Make Love, 1960, The Misfits, 1961. Now you see, The Misfits is probably the last completed film of Marilyn Monroe, and if I remember correctly, was that of Clark Gable as well. And so you see, he wrote the screenplay for one of his wife's last complete films. Everybody Wins, 1984, Death of a Salesman, 1985, The Crucible, 1995, Mr. Peters' Connections, 1998. And if I remember correctly, the first movie on Death of a Salesman, in which it was Dustin Hoffman who played the role of Willy Loman. There are assorted fictions as well. Focus, a novel, 1945, The Misfits, a novella, 1957, I Don't Need You Anymore, short stories, 1967, Homely Girl, short story, 1992, published in UK as Plain Girl Alive in 1995, The Performance, short story, Presence Stories, that is short stories, published in 2007, posthumously. There are non-fictional writing as well. And these are Situation Normal, 1944, In Russia, 1969, In the Country, 1977, Chinese Encounters, 1979. And it's interesting that he traveled to China to oversee the production of Death of a Salesman. Salesman in Beijing, it's called, 1984, Time Bends a Life, Methuen, London, published by Methuen, London, and published in 1987. Now we come to the play, Death of a Salesman. You see, it is a play which interrogates the American dream, and you have been listening to this idea of American dream for quite some time now. You have been told that The Great Gatsby is an exploration of the American dream, and there have been several other works by the American authors who explored the idea of American dream, who contested the idea of American dream, interrogated it, and sometimes debunked it. Now here is a play which interrogates the idea, the concept of American dream, and completely debunks it. You see, here is a man who is a salesman who believes that if he is attractive enough and if he is well liked by people around, he could become a successful businessman, which he never is. And he suffers from various psychological problems as a result of his failure to negotiate with the realities around, and he bequeaths the legacy to his, at least tries to bequeath the same legacy to his sons, who he wanted to dream big, to make a lot of money, to be well liked by the society. And the happiness, the idea of happiness consisted in being prosperous and in being well liked. And this is what American dream was all about for Willy Loman, and this is something that Arthur Miller contested in this play. These are the major characters in the play. William Loman, the salesman, he is referred to as Willy in the play. He is 63 years old and is very unstable, tending to imagining events from the past that are not real. He oscillates between different ideas about his life. So what happens to Willy Loman, he is a very unsuccessful salesman. And now you see, since a salesman is at the center of the play, that kind of foregrounds the American materialistic American concept of materialistic success, as if the whole nation looks up to a salesman for him to be successful, which means making a lot of money and being well liked by everybody, and the space for the individual to search for his own idea of happiness is kind of negated in the space which is provided to Willy Loman. There is his wife, Linda Loman. Linda is a passively supportive character portrayed by the playwright. She is docile when Willy talks unrealistically about his hopes for their future, although she seems to have a sound knowledge of what is really going on around them. Here you see an American woman who is the wife of an unsuccessful salesman. She is very caring, very protective of her husband, and she probably knows a lot about what is happening around her, though she pretends before her husband that she doesn't know anything about what is happening to him. She believes, as if she believes in whatever he comes back home to tell her, and she has complete trust in whatever he tells her. Willy has two sons. The elder one is Biff Loman. Biff was a football player with great potential in high school, but failed in mathematics in his senior year and dropped out of summer school when he found Willy with another woman while visiting him in Boston. Now you see, there is Willy, who is actually cheating on his wife in a Boston hotel, and is accidentally found out by his son. And this son, Biff Loman, for a brief period he went to the West in search of wealth in the hope of making it big. Now you see, Willy is kind of circumscribed by the urban space in Brooklyn where he lives, and Biff moves over to the American West for some time. And if you remember, particularly towards the end of the 19th and at the beginning of the 20th century, American West was supposed to be a big promise for people who wanted to make it big, and there are several writers and novels, short stories, plays where there are characters who move to the West to earn wealth there. And you know, going to the West gave Biff some idea of space, moved far away from the narrow confines of Brooklyn where he was born and where he grew up. And he was very happy to work on the farm. And so you see the idea that you have to be in business, you have to be well liked by people, you have to earn a lot of money, and that is what constitutes happiness, is in a way being contested by Biff when he feels that he is very happy working on a farm far out in the West, and he is not in Brooklyn, he is not in the city, he is not a businessman, he is not trying to be well liked by other people, and he is not earning a lot of money. Harold Happy Loman, he was Willy's younger son. He has lived under the supervision of his older brother Biff for most of his life and seemed to be almost ignorant, but he still tries to support his family. Now you see, Willy Loman kind of fantasizes about the prospect of his sons, because now that he knows there is not much prospect left for him, he fantasizes about his sons' prospects. He believes that they are well liked, they are popular in the society, that they are both of them are going into business, and they will be making money, they will be respectable, and thus they will be happy. So you see, there is a kind of logical development to happiness. If you are not into business and you are not well liked by people and you are not earning a lot of money, you have absolutely no business to be happy. And you see, this is where the American dream went wrong, and this is what Arthur Miller is exposing in this play. There are few other characters in the play. One is Charlie. He is Willie's neighbor. He pities Willie and frequently lends him money and comes over to play cards with Willie, even though Willie often treats him badly. And there is Bernard, Charlie's son. In Willie's flashbacks, he's a nerd, and Willie forces him to give beef test answer. He worships Beef and can do anything for him. And you know, Beef was a hero in his high school football team, and so Bernard was a fan of Beef. But in later life, what happens? Bernard becomes a very successful lawyer, kind of meets the criteria of American dream, which fails both Willie's sons. There are a couple of major issues in the play. The one being the concept of reality and make-believe. The most important exploration of this dichotomy between the reality and make-believe takes place in the character of Willie Loman, because Willie Loman is in the habit of fantasizing about his past. He imagines his past to be what it was not. It's not only that he is reminiscing, not only that he is remembering his past, he is kind of trying to go back to his pristine childhood. It's nothing like that only. He is not only reminiscing, he is also making up. He believes that there are things that happened in the past which actually did not happen. So this hiatus between reality and make-believe foregrounds the very reality of the failure of American dream. Because you know, Willie Loman was a person whose father left him to go to the West. So the legacy of his parents were poverty and aspiration to become rich enough to be recognized in the society, to be well liked, to be respectable, and thereby to be happy. And there is the concept of the American dream. We have been talking about this concept of American dream for quite some time, and on quite some occasions we have talked about it. The American dream, you know, actually has, should I say, a long ancestry, because when people from the European continent moved to the American soil, they believed that they are going to establish a society which will be rid of all the persecutions from which they were trying to flee, that this will give them enough opportunity to amass wealth. And you see, wealth is the creation of wealth is inextricably associated with the American dream. So the American dream is primarily a dream of materialist success. And you see, probably it is where the American dream went wrong, because in an individual's life, wealth is important, but wealth is not the most important thing, and happiness has not got much to do with wealth. And so it has been critiqued over and over again by the writers of American literature. So we come to the end of this module. I will like to recapitulate some of the things that we have already discussed. That Arthur Miller was a very important literary figure in the history of American literature, not only because he wrote successful plays, but because of his socio-political commitments. Because you see, an author becomes even more important when he becomes a socially responsible man, when he contributes considerably to the ideological entrappings of his of the society around him, and he particularly becomes important if he had the conviction to contest the state ideology, if he has the courage to criticize the state ideology. And Arthur Miller was important also for this, because you know, Elia Kazan was interrogated by the House Un-American Activities Committee, and there Elia Kazan somewhat compromised with his interrogators that the names of other collaborators in the project were given to these the people on the house, and Arthur Miller was duly informed. He traveled to Salem to study the 1692 witch hunt, and came back to write The Crucible, where he relates the Salem witch hunt with McCarthyism in America. And you see, this is a very strong statement against the state authority. But the same man, when it was, probably it was in 1969, when the Russian authors who rebelled against the communist regime in the Soviet Socialist Republic of Russia were sent to Siberia, he was the man to take up cudgel on their behalf. So you see, here is a man who was committed to a cause which he considered to be right, not necessarily somebody who was being dictated by what was in vogue and what other people were thinking. So I would like you to read this particular play, Death of a Salesman, in the light of these facts of Arthur Miller's life. Thank you.